Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another edition of the Tetracast. This is RPG Site's weekly podcast where we get the site staff together to talk about our favorite genre of video games. My name is Brian Vitale. Joining me today, I've got Josh Torres.
This is the last podcast of January already.
Yeah, we have Adam Vitale.
Hello.
And Chow Min Woo.
How's it going?
So it is, like Josh has said, is the last recording that we're going to be doing in January, and we have been spending a few weeks talking about probably the biggest release of the month for our site, which is Fire Emblem. So we're going to take a break from that this week, even though I know several of us are still working our way through that game. In this last week, the game that came out just a few days ago that some of us have been working through is Forspoken. So that's going to be the focus of this podcast, and I know Forspoken has kind of had an up and down marketing cycle. It's had some impressions that have been more lukewarm. It's some people have been more surprised by it as it's released. Some people have had their preconceptions confirmed. So we've had I know I've had a chance to at least start it. I've put maybe 5 or 6 hours into it. I know that Josh has put a couple hours into it. We don't have a review up on the site. I don't even know who's reviewing it. We didn't get pre-release access. So
yeah, we didn't get review code, like pre-release review code or anything. I guess I'm technically reviewing it, but I'm like going, taking my time with it. I mean, people have already made up their mind on this game, I guess. Like with the reviews out there, and then whether people have played the game or not. It's just people. I feel like people have pretty much solidified their opinion on this game, like for the most part. For me, it's like I don't know what to think of it yet, but I think for most people, it's like they're either on the side of like they're gonna play it or they're not gonna play it at this point. Which is weird to say.
I'm on the latter side because when I look at this game, it doesn't look all that appealing to me, and then it's very expensive in.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a conversation that's like become more and more apparent with like next gen, not next gen, current gen only releases, right? With the especially structure of like $70, and not people are really putting these games under a very critical eye of like, are these games really worth $70? Are they really worth getting? Like, are they really worth my money? Because that's a big thing to consider. People think it's like, oh, it's just a $10 price hike. It's like that's pretty significant, modern day. It's like people are very when they think of like how much they're willing to spend on like a game on 60 versus 70, when it comes to 70, people are like, okay, this game really has to like prove its worth then at that price point.
Unfortunately, I don't know exactly why it is, but something about Forspoken, like I'm still playing it, and we'll talk about like specific impressions. We're basically playing it as fans at this point because we played it as it's released. We didn't have pre-release access. I kind of described it like, I think Green Man Gaming had like a 20% off like pre-release voucher. It's like, wow, I can get this game for $55. What a deal.
I mean, I was very honest about it, like on this podcast, and also to Adam. It's like, Adam, I'm not fucking playing this game. I'm not spending $70 this game to play it. I'm just straight up like, if I'm reviewing it, then that's like probably the only way I'm gonna play this game. TVH, and I'll be very very fair to it, obviously. But it's just like, but like when it comes to like burning $70, like $70, like for me, it's just like I don't know if I'm willing to do that. If it's like on a deep discount months down the road, then maybe I'll play it. But if I'm not playing it right now unless I'm like getting code for it, pretty much.
I'm not sure what it is about this game. Like even me, who like right before we started recording this podcast, I was working my way through it just to try to get as far as I could so I could talk about it, from some position of relevancy. But there's something about this game that is just like an interest black hole. Like, oh, you're talking about Forspoken. I'm going to click off this podcast. And if you haven't, thank you so much. But so none of us here have gotten past like the 5-6 hour mark. So we are speaking from a place of ignorance in terms. I know like Final Boss has been on YouTube for like a week and a half because of leaks or whatever. Obviously, some other outlets like our friends over at RPG Fan did get early access. We didn't. It seems like Square Enix was very stingy with code for whatever reason. It's the first time that I've played a game of this style. And by that, I mean open world, AAA, usual trappings and trimmings game. Like I think the last time I've played that was Cyberpunk. So like for me, it's almost nostalgic. Like, I remember this. But if you've been playing like Assassin's Creed Valhalla or those other ones, maybe this might feel a little bit more old hat to you, but for me, I'm actually kind of like, it's been a 2.5 year break since I've done something like this, so maybe this is actually not going to feel too bland or too boring for me. But I'm only like 6 hours in, so is it going to maintain its interest for the long run? And I've heard like conflicting stories about how long this game is, where apparently you can beat the main story in like 25 hours or 20 hours. It's not too long, but based on my time starting about the first like of the 4 major zones, it's pretty packed. So you could probably, if you are really endeared to it, suck yourself in pretty thoroughly if you wanted to. I don't know to what extent I'll be experiencing it. So I'm trying to think of where we should.
I guess like, the best place to start is like, since you're the farthest out of us, or if Adam or Char ever gonna touch this game, just like, what are your first impressions? I guess like your initial impressions of like everything you've played so far.
Okay, my initial impression is this is a little bit nuanced, but not really. So there has been a few cutscenes that have been rolling around that a lot of people have been like taking the piss on or whatever. That is kind of the tone of the game, where it is, I hate this word, but cringy. But I do think that those examples that have been going out around Twitter or social media or whatever have been kind of the worst of it. The rest of it is usually like she's the main character, Frey Holland, is a New Yorker it's an isekai. So a lot of that same sort of stuff, those same sort of like flavor applies. But I love
how isekai is like feels like a mainstream term when people talk about this game. It's like almost implied. It's like, of course everyone knows what an isekai is when they hear that.
I have a question. You know the witch, was it the Chronicles of Narnia, the Witch in the Wardrobe? Okay, that's technically one of the earliest isekais.
Okay, it's not the earliest isekai. It's definitely like another world story.
But during that time, do they actually call it Inner World Story or isekai back in those?
They don't call it.
The term was portal fantasy.
Yes, there we go. Oh man!
I think the reason why isekai caught on, I think, is just because it's a very unique term that has a lot of utility in describing a specific thing that's become relatively commonplace.
Yes, especially like when it comes to like anime like storytelling, like remember like in the like mid 2010s, like early to mid 2010s, like the trend in anime at that point was like the battle high school like anime. Like you just saw it a dime a dozen. You saw it like from like Mahoka to Rakudai, Cavalry to Asterisk 4 to all sorts of dozens and dozens of shows. That was just the trend in anime back then. And now, like, the trend in anime that people, are like exposed to, for better or worse, is like this another world story, because this genre really caught on just like in the last 5 to 7 years.
Specifically, the fact that the word is just so useful is really the main reason why it caught on, because there is no easy English equivalent. Like, are we going to call these portal fantasies? And that's kind of confusing. Like, what is a portal fantasy? Where isekai, I think, just is a simple word, means a very specific thing that is very applicable to basically this exact sort of framing. So I think that's the main reason why I caught on, obviously having roots in anime and light novels, but it's just a very convenient term. I think convenient is the best word to use.
Yeah. And everything that like that pertains to it. Like for people who don't who are like, what the fuck are they talking about? It's like isekai just basically means another world. Like it's like another world story. Like a person gets transported to another world. That's basically it.
So when you start out Forspoken, I have mentioned on this podcast several times that I like it when games, especially games that have like a larger scope in terms of like traversal or map size, which this game does have, just to like shut up and let you play. Just like, all right, just give me the systems and let me have fun. Let me figure out what I want to do. Unfortunately, Forspoken for the first like 2.5 chapters doesn't really do that. It's a very slow burn to start out.
It's a really frustrating thing, because like when you think about it, like it doesn't really like you don't actually start like quote unquote like playing the game for real till like an hour and a half in, and it's like it has so much setup that I feel like if it just got to that point like 20 minutes in, it wouldn't get half of the shit that it's getting, to be honest.
And apparently, or I learned just when I was playing through, I put in about 3 more hours this morning, And the thing is once you get to Athia and once you start learning your parkour and getting the magic and like the story has kind of opened up, the game still quite hasn't doled out everything to you yet. You still have to do like another chapter's worth of story before the game says like, okay, here's how you upgrade abilities. Okay, here's how you interact with the locked labyrinths. Okay, here's some different things you'll find on the map. Okay, now you're actually free to roam. It still seems like the game hasn't quite doled out everything. The game doesn't even like introduce detours, which is its version of side quests, until you do maybe about an hour of story in Athia. And then even then, the very first couple side quests are like chase a cat or have a tour of the city. And maybe that's like, I shouldn't be too judgmental on the first introductory side quests. But like once I'm finally like been told to go confront the first Tantas, which is about, for me, that was about 3.5 hours in. That's when it first felt like, okay, finally the game is shutting up and letting me play. And that's what I put about 90 minutes past that point this morning. And that's when I finally said, okay, if the game had gotten to this point 2 hours ago, I think I would have been a lot more warm on just the opening hours of this game. It's not bad. It's just kind of slow. And if you're not feeling the story or the characters, it's a hurdle to get through.
I think it's characters, even if you like try to get like take it in its most charitable light, because like the game, like I didn't think the game would do this like when it was first revealed, right? I thought it was gonna be a very like they would get to like the isekai part of it, get like they're transporting to another world, because basically Frey is from New York City, stuff happens to her and she gets transported to the world of Athia. And what I didn't think they would do early on is like they would establish so much of her real world counter for like what are her circumstances in the real world. To some extent, I wonder if there's like any payoff for this in the long run, right? Like if the story develops and actually like, because like it feels so overburdening and like it feels like you're drowning in it like from the get go, and it's like it's hard to like when you're plunged so like deep so far to like the proverbial like ocean already. You have to like give yourself time to surface and breathe a little, and this game does not do that because it hits you like, here's Frey. She's when you first see her, she's in court because she did larceny again, and then they try to establish that like she's a problem child right away, that she has no parents, she's an orphan, she gets into like into she gets into like trouble often, and like the judge tries to like gives her some slack, but like they're very upfront that there's a very like occasional normal thing for her to just like get in trouble, getting into trouble with the court, and so forth. And after that, after she gets released from court, she gets into a trouble with a gang. And then after she escapes from that, she goes to her home and she's barely keeping things together, tends to a cat. You finally get maybe a moment's rest, and right when she, wakes up, her place is on fire because the gang found her. And then it's just like it just never lets up. Like, yes, we get it. Her life is fucking shitty, And I feel like there could have been probably a better way to present all of this in a way that like makes you kind of feel for Frey. But from the get go, it's hard to like her, like even despite all this, like you expect like to be more empathetic to Frey, and to some extent you are, but to her outlook on it is like kind of it's hard to get invested right away with this character. And I'm still not really invested with this character because the way that they dole out like this characterization of her, it feels so. There's something that's not really connecting for me, that like it should, but it isn't, and I don't know exactly the best way to like put that into words, if you know what I mean.
I will say though that I did appreciate. I'm a pet person, and I did appreciate the interactions with Homer the cat. Yeah, even though it felt a little bit. So when the game has kind of illustrated that Frey's life is down and she's not doing well financially, she's not doing well, productivity wise. She ends up having to give up the cat, which is like a sad story beat, but the way it does it is just a bit awkward. So one of the very first characters you meet other than Frey is the judge that is like seeing her trial in court. And like, okay, this is the judge. And it suggests that she and the judge have met a few times. Which is like, okay, I get that. But then it's like when she gives up the cat, she gives up the cat to the judge. And I'm like, what, really? Is that okay. It just felt like a bit like, oh, we haven't introduced any other characters that this cat could possibly go to, so of course she's going to give it to the judge. It hasn't really established that these two are like family friends or anything like that.
I feel like this would be more effective if they like doled out those story beats like as if she was like in a more concise version as she's like already been transported to Athia. If you establish there's a way to like make these story beats more emotional and like I connect with a player more if you just dole them out like in ways that like you're already playing the game, that like you're learning about friends like you're already playing. Like you're not really playing the game at this point. You're just kind of like going from story cutscene to story cutscene, and it's like, and like it does. It feels like it feels like a slog to get through it at some point because you're not really you know that the game isn't this, you know, and it's just one of those things that it's like if they just got to like being transported to like the world of Athia like within the first 3 minutes, you know, and then you learn more about Frey like within like the next like maybe 10 minutes like, you know, after that, yeah, like, you know, maybe to like flashbacks or like, you know, just as Frey's like trying to think about her circumstances as she was getting like, you know, transported right away, and so forth. It I think seeing I guess I think that would be more of like a stronger way to like kind of resonate through that by like presenting players that through a more like, you know, flashback context rather than like, okay, yes, this is her current circumstances. Because for me, I don't know if this is gonna have any payoff. Like, is it gonna have payoff 10 hours in, 15 hours in, 20 hours in? Will like any of this like matter, you know?
Yeah, and the fact that she never mentions like Homer once upon being transported, or she mentions New York a few times to the cuff, but that's kind of it. And it just seems like, oh, none of that stuff. Yeah, it's hard to imagine like, is this going to pay off, or was that just set dressing? And I'm trying to be like optimistic and be like, okay, eventually it's going to loop back how these two worlds, like obviously there's the lingering questions about why was she transported. I'm guessing it has to do something with her being an orphan in the first place, but who knows? I don't know yet. And maybe at that point it'll start tying together, and we're just kind of at that point where you're supposed to be questioning and wondering. So I'm trying not to be too judgmental at the moment, but at the same time I'm not hopeful because it hasn't like breadcrumbed it in a way that makes me think like, oh, okay, they're setting something up here.
There's also like the not the problem, but the kind of like a frustrating like narrative decision also, like when like, you know, Frey goes, you know, gets transported to Athia, like she just kind of like it's hard to take the setting seriously because the protagonist doesn't take it seriously, you know what I'm saying? So like when it comes to like getting transported, it's just like, oh, is that a motherfucking dragon? Is that like who's talking to me? Like it, like people compare like, you know, the clips that are shared all through social media, really compare it to like, you know, the Marvel Cinematic Universe writing or the Joss Whedon type of writing of like of a protagonist who kind of mocks their setting, that the instances and the world that they've been placed in. It's like it's hard to get for me personally, it's hard to get invested into the world if like even like even the character or like the main character that I'm controlling or even like the main character of a film doesn't like take their um current situations circumstances to like seriously to it's like to some agreeable amount. It's not like always mocking the scenery that they're in. It's like to some extent, yes, you're still like bewildered by like what's going on around you, but at the same time, you kind of at some point it is believable and totally reasonable to just like have it soak in and be like, okay, yes, this is your new reality, and that and this game like has like it tries to contend, it wants to like do that, but it like gets itself in the way of its writing because it definitely wants to make Frey almost like a Marvel like film protagonist in a way. Like when people think about like it's not just like oh they're behind me and then like winking at the camera type of deals, but like I was reading a feature about this Austin Walker at Clockwork World's his newsletter, and he makes out like a really great point about like it's not like when you think about like that type of writing, it's like it's beyond that. It's not just that, right? It's like when think about like the new Spider-Man film. Like I think it was either the first or second one from the MCU. I forgot which one, where they like mock the name of like Dr. Otto Octavian. No, Dr. Otto Octavian.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, like from Dr. Octopus. Like they mock his name for like how zany it sounds, or how like just like it's an uncommon name. It's like kind of that's when I think of like Joss Whedon type of like writing, I think about like kind of mocking like the world that it's already set in, and it's like it's hard for me to like get invested if you're really if you're trying to take me down that road. It's like if you're not willing to take your world seriously to some extent, then why should I?
Yeah, I kind of agree with that, because I don't want to sit here, because I know we were someone commented on our podcast a few weeks ago that we were a little bit too down. I forget on which game it was. I'm like, all right, I want to be positive on Forspoken, but when you're talking about this superhero Marvel-esque, the thing that came up in my brain was at one point, let me set up the stage of Athia a little bit for those that haven't been following the marketing. So there's basically, at least as far as I can tell, within the first like 6-7 hours, there's only one real main city area left called Sepal, and it's got like slums and an upper city, and everything outside of the city has been affected by something that Frey calls the break. It's like this zombification, petrification phenomenon that is affecting creatures, it's affecting humans, and for reasons that haven't been explained to the player yet, at the point I'm at, Frey is immune to it, which is why she goes out into the world to kind of investigate what's going on. As you do this, you are introduced to these 4 major characters, these like war sorceresses called the Tantas, which have at one point in Athia's history were revered as like saviors and protectors, but somehow themselves got kind of power hungry and corrupted. One of them attacks Sepal, and then basically Frey wants to take revenge, and that's kind of where I'm at, where I'm going after the first Tanta, and it seems like it escalated very quickly, where it's like, I'm going to kill this bitch because she attacked the city that is only the first place I happen to land. So you go out into the break, and it's kind of, if it was contextualized differently, it would kind of be like really dour and almost bittersweet, where you find these zombies and you're like, oh, these are people. They're humans that were petrified, and now like you have to put them down. You can't leave the city walls because they're going to attack you. And it's supposed to be like this kind of sad thing. But then you're like, all right, time to test out my magic against them. And then you fight a few of them. And then Frey does this thing where it's like, I'm in the major leagues now. Things like that, where she's just taking it so like glibly. And I'm just like, what? These are people. Like, you probably have met their family members in the city. And I'm not saying it had to be like super sad and super serious,
right?
But I'm like, okay, I'm trying to get invested in the lore of this world, about how these people they had their trust in these protectors of theirs, and then this corruption is taking away and recontextualizing things that they knew, and many of them have lost family that couldn't make it into the safety of the city. And but here's Frey like just kind of quipping as she shoots magic at them just outside the city walls. And it's just kind of like incongruent a little bit.
I will say that like the gameplay itself, like free movement and like the combat system, like just the early goings for me so far, like that actually has been like okay for me. Like I think the that aspect has been hitting for me. Like I remember when they actually like let you out into the small part of the world for the first time. Like there's this alter zombie bear like boss. I played this on like it's not really a boss. It's like an optional hard encounter that you can do if you want. It's like I play on hard mode because like, okay, I wonder if like the gameplay would be like enjoyable on hard, like just like that, getting you to like like do more of your magic spells and not having things die as quickly and so forth. Try to make like your basic combat count. And like that was like I spent like an hour and a half on that encounter, and like I actually really liked it because I got to like understand the ins and outs of combat, of like understanding like because the there's like a dodge in the game that reminds me of like FF15's dodge system.
It does.
Where, like, yeah, you hold down the button, and like when you hold down this button, like any incoming like attacks coming to you, you'll like auto dodge. I think it is like tied to like there's like a stamina cost to it, but for the most part, it's a pretty like damn good dodge. So like and there are ways that like when you dodge a certain way and you go up to the air, you can actually like when you're up in the air, you can actually like do an attack, and like it's like almost like a guaranteed crit when you do an attack in the air, and like exploiting that system is like really interesting because it makes you think of like, okay, how do I like dodge incoming things to a point where like I'm able to like get airborne, but you don't want to get too airborne because after like a certain point, like once you do an action in the air, like you're totally vulnerable. So you don't want to be like too in the air for too much. In that you want to get to like a certain height where like you jump and you fire it off and like land immediately. So like it's interesting. Like learning that system. I think I'm really hoping that like the spell like learning more spells like um they're more like visually and like mechanically interesting. Like hopefully that like that ramp up like gets going really fast because like I think there's like potential in this battle system where I'm at the moment, but like it's kind of a downer when you're like your first like real attack spells are like basically like the same like Gatling gun like firing off spells, and like the only real like indicate like things that like differentiate them is like when you hold down R2 like to either have like a burst shot which will like give you like throw like a big rock at them, or like a scat which will be like a more powered up like beam after like Gatling gun them, or like a shield shot which is like a kind of gun as where like you get like rock debris and like plunge it all at once like in front of you after it makes like a shield in front of you. And like I was like, okay, I can see like them being useful in certain scenarios, but I kind of wish that like there was more starting variation.
Yeah, I actually thought about that because the way the game deals this out is that the first magic Frey gets, her inherent magic is purple magic, which is the earth magic. And based on, this was covered in the marketing, as you go through the game, you'll unlock like the fire magic and the water magic. And the earth magic is kind of a strange thing to start on, because when I think of earth magic, I think of like shield, defenses, leeches, poison, which is kind of what those things are. And it's thematically good. It's just when that's what you start out with and that's what you're introduced to, I'm surprised they didn't go with something a little bit more basic, like Frey starts with fire magic, and then you unlock earth and water and whatever later. But I was actually trying to say, like, normally when I play a game like this, I'm not completely like comprehensive or like, okay, I'm going to see absolutely every icon on the map because there's a ton before I do the story. I was actually thinking, all right, I'm going to beeline the story a little bit so that I can unlock a few more magic types just to kind of give me that variety rather than bury into what you start with for too long before it gets stale. So I do know that there are, based on the marketing, 4 magic types that you unlock throughout the game. I believe the first one you unlock is fire, which is if I beat the next story boss, I'll unlock that. It'll be interesting to see how those, because the way that you described it, there's for every single element, there's an attack magic and then there's support magic. Attack magic's on your right trigger and bumper, or sorry, just the trigger. Your support magic's on your left trigger. And there's already, even with just the purple magic unlocked, there's a little bit of like fun interplay about what things combine together and which you want to use in which situation. So I could actually see it's not quite as binary as, I don't want to boil this down to like the story is bad, the gameplay is good. It's not quite as simple as that, but I think the story is a little bit bland and uneven, but the gameplay has a lot more promise. So I do think it teeters in that direction. When you talked about the stamina system, I actually think it does a couple things that I think are very smart, because when I first realized that the dodge system works like Final Fantasy 15, I thought, oh, that's going to make this game brain dead. And because in Final Fantasy 15, you could exploit that to like no end pretty easily without a lot of skill. So I was thinking, oh, this game is going to be similar. And I'm sure you can still get to that same point with practice, but if you hold what defaults to the B button, the parkour button, you will dodge incoming attacks for as long as you have stamina, but your stamina will drain. However, even when your stamina is empty, you can still time B presses to do the same dodge. So I do like that it doesn't punish you completely for running out of stamina. You're not a sitting duck. You just have to use a little bit better timing, which I thought that was smart. And the other thing that I thought was smart is that as you do the parkour, like if you're just in the open field, you will also use stamina. But if you get into a battle, as soon as it like goes into the battle state, you gain at least a partial bar of stamina back immediately. I don't know if it's 3 or 4 pips, or it depends on how many pips you have total. But you're not going to be in a point where it's like, oh crap, I entered a battle, but I used up all my stamina getting here. I'm starting out with 0. It gives you like an immediate sum of it right when the battle initiates, which are 2 little small things. I'm thinking, okay, there are some smart under the hood things that they've done to make the battles feel good and not feel like my go-to example for this always is Dragon's Dogma, where the stamina / magic meter is what you use to run and cast spells, which always felt kind of awkward to fight between those 2 things. Where in this game, it does kind of the same thing, but has a few little those tweaks that make it so it's not quite as cumbersome. And on the parkour thing, where you talked about how moving around the field feels good, I do agree. And it's actually quite, like, I actually kind of was surprised from like, oh, at least in this game, you move pretty fast. But even with that expectation in mind, there was one point where I was looking at the map and I was like looking at all the icons, and there's a ton of them. Like, okay, that's a pretty far away. But then like within like 6 in-game minutes, I was at my destination because Frey just has the traversal in this game feels pretty good at long distances. And it never quite feels like it's too plotting or slow or meandering. I will say I have run into a few cases where you're like indoors or in a small, more confined space where the way that the parkour works, it's like intending that you have wide chamber to work in, where if you're in like a smaller space, you don't quite have the dexterity or the nimbleness to like position yourself quite that detailed. So there's a few times where I was just like flinging myself around a bunch of battles and like willy-nilly, and I kind of felt like, okay, slow down a bit. I almost felt like I was on ice. It wasn't too bad, but I was just kind of like it works better at the large scale than the small scale. But even at the small scale, I think with some practice it could end up feeling pretty good.
I think the thing that's like it's difficult to like get accustomed to is like, since you don't really have like a manual aim, you have to like kind of rely on the auto targeting reticle to like aim your shots and everything. So that always gets a little bit finicky. Like you can kind of like maneuver it with the right analog stick, but even then it's just like for the most part you're kind of having to rely on auto targeting to get you where you need to go. It's okay.
One thing that I also found a bit, and this might just be like acclimating, but the game does this thing where, and a lot of games do this, where when you hit an enemy, they have little health bars over their head, but when you deal damage, at least if I recall correctly, it doesn't deplete right away. It animates down. So like if a health bar, you do half the damage in a hit, it doesn't immediately go chunk down to half. It decreases from full to half in an animation as it slides down the bar. That's also true when the enemy's defeated. So sometimes I wasn't quite clear when the enemy, like, oh, I defeated that enemy, because the bar was still depleting from full to empty, except for the fact that I was locked on. But when you defeat it, your lock on removes itself. Like, oh, I lost my lock on. That enemy's dead. Time to focus on the next thing. Or I almost just kind of wish, where it's like, yeah, the animation on your UI is fun, but it almost like it removes some clarity from what I'm doing. And in general, it feels like the team here at Luminous was really proud of their UI work. A lot of the UI has like animations when you open a menu, or even when you like complete a quest, it like sparkles into frame and then fades out. And there's a few times where I'm like pressing the A button. I'm like, all right, I get it. I finished this detour. You can sparkle out of view now and let me play. And it'd be fine if it was just something that like popped in and out on the side, but usually it's right in the center of the frame. And usually Frey is either locked or stuck in a slow position until whatever animation on the UI is playing finishes, and then you're back to being able to roam. Or it's just a little bit, it's not too annoying, but it's a little bit where I'm just like, all right, I get it. And when I was just completing like a regular dialogue tree where the dialogue had commenced and was finished, but the character had to like reanimate back to their default position before I could like break free from that dialogue interaction. Okay. Like, all right, I'm done talking to you. So there's just a few little niggling issues like that where I'm like, where it feels sluggish, but deliberately so, because the game is just very proud of its animation work and its UI work. Where I just kind of wished it was like, snappier.
It's very, very FF15 in that respect, because there are certain things about FF15's UI that's like, it's probably taking you too long to do this, and it's because like Luminous is just like, it's such a weird like engine. Like the whenever the like, obviously there's technically the second game from Luminous Productions, the FF15 being the first one. You know, because that team eventually became Luminous Productions after FF15, and it's just like there's just something about like their approach and their style. Like they really want to show you the Luminous engine to the point that's like it kind of feels like FF15 and this game almost feel like proof of concepts of the engine, and they hope to like license this engine out to like other developers for them to use, so they can like start getting in like some additional revenue that way. That's like kind of like the voice inside speaking to me saying this is why they're doing this. You know, they're like selling an engine to people. That's why they're doing this.
The engine is, so I'm not too technically inclined on this sort of thing, but just from the eye test, this game is pretty taxing on my PC. It's probably the most taxing game I've played since Cyberpunk. So it defaults on the high settings to have like ray traced shadows and ambient occlusion. I immediately turn those off because they're too much of a resource hog. And there's some places where the engine does some stuff that I think is like technically difficult, but I don't know if it's worth the trade-off or it doesn't have that wow factor. Like, for instance, whenever you go to a monument and you clear it to get your stat boost or your trial or whatever, like all the rocks kind of shatter away from the monument in a way where I'm like, I bet that was, you know, the way that this is animated is taxing, and like it's not pre-canned animation. It's actually like the physics involved with this shattering of this rock into 100 little pieces, where it's like, yeah, I guess it's fine, but it doesn't really look that great. And then like the environment is pretty detailed, and I want to like, the game looks good. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it's a bad looking game, but like, I don't know if maybe the art direction doesn't pair with it that well, because there's a lot of like browns and grays, and I guess that's by design, because the whole idea is that the break has corrupted things and petrified things, and the enemies that you're fighting are usually like, it's a bear, only it's green and yellow, or it's a human, but it's got yellow tendrils out of them. And maybe it's just the fact that the first area you go to is like a desert region, which might not be the most fanciest to show off. Maybe later in this game, there's a super lush forest or something that I haven't encountered yet. So it's like, the game looks nice, but I don't know if it's not doing anything I've really seen before, or I haven't really ever paused and been like, wow, I need to take a screenshot of this. It just kind of looks fine. It looks good. Maybe my expectations are kind of misaligned, but if their goal
I think the only thing that's like really obvious so far is like some of like the particle effects like during combat. Like I think that's, but I generally agree with you too. Like I'm on the same boat with you, where like I kind of need like DLSS to get me where I need to go with this, and like it's generally like, you know, I'm like high settings for the most part, so medium here and there to like kind of get a solid 60 going. But yes, my PC's like, oh, what are you trying to run? And then there's on top of like the crazy file size, right? They're talking about like over 100 gigs for this game.
Oh
like,
yeah, I didn't have enough room on my I have an old school SATA SSD, and then I have the NAND M2 SSD, and I didn't want to clear off space off my M2s. I just put it on the SATA. But the one thing that I know has been going through the Reddit and other social is that this game makes use of the direct storage capacity of Windows 11, and I'm hoping getting the details right. But whenever you continue from the menu or even fast travel on the map, it does load really quickly. Which is kind of nice. But one thing that I don't know if it's my setup or if you have a faster SSD, like mine's only a PCI Gen 3 and not 4, so it's slower than what's in a PS5, for instance, for me. But whenever I load up the map, it takes a while for the map to load in, and then if I pan too far left or right, I actually have to like wait to let it load.
Oh wow. Huh.
So yeah, I'm not.
I have mine on. I installed it at NVMe right now. So it hasn't been too bad for loading. I've seen like the PS5 like quick loading though. Like that thing, that shit is super fast.
Yeah, and
on PS5.
For me, it's just kind of like fast traveling, barely any loading screen, loading from the map, like or from the menu. I mean, I don't think I ever got a loading screen. I think it just popped me right there. Those were fast, but the map was slow. I'm not sure why that was. I'm guessing it's something to do with my configuration, but it's a taxing game. And I was actually talking to Adam earlier. I'm like, maybe this year I think my computer is like a 2019 build, so not like old, but not new anymore. So I'm like, all right, but you know, predates this gen.
What's your current graphics card right now?
It's a 3090, but my CPU is old. That's the thing. So
what's your CPU?
It's a 9900K.
Okay, but even people are like,
I'm running this just fine on high settings. I guess I'd like to be in a place where ray tracing is something I could actually like look at, but not have to play at 20 FPS. But
I don't know. Like maybe you have to wait for the next for the 5090 when it overtakes your whole motherboard and it's like it's eating your motherboard.
I'm still running this game plenty fine. I don't want to like besmirch that, but it is taxing. And if you have even a computer that was built like in 2017 or 18, probably have to turn down some settings for it. It's just that the visual trade off, I'm not sure is as apparent as it was like last gen, or maybe in a different engine.
Yeah, like nothing about it is really like bothering me graphically aside from like some of the particle effects. But like even then, like some of like the interior lighting kind of like feels super off. Like I feel like the lighting in this game feels off for some reason. Like it's vivid, but it feels wrongly lit in like certain spots.
It does that thing where I forget what you call this, but the technique where when you're exiting from an interior building, everything is super saturated bright until you step outside. It's supposed to mimic that, like how your eyes adjust when you're going from a dimly.
I don't need that in games, man. I hate that in games.
Well, I don't think I mind it in concept, but they apply it to an extent where it's like everything is white, like everything's a light bulb until you step outside and think, oh, everything's normal now. Like, okay, you can tone that effect down. I don't know if there's a slider there somewhere in the menu. That does remind me I haven't looked at this a ton, but the game does have a good number of like accessibility settings in terms of like the subtitles, the size, whether or not the subtitles have a background on them or not, whether or not it displays the speaker's name or not. It had some control-based accessibility settings. So luckily I'm in a place where I don't need a ton of those, but I just saw they had a menu dedicated for that. I'm like, that's nice. Hopefully that's the sort of thing.
Speaking of subtitles, like I really like that you mentioned subtitles, because I was going to forget this, but like the one really, really small little detail that I like that like it makes my brain feel good is like whenever Frey talks, it's like a normal, like, the subtitles all display at once, and like, just it's normal. Standard. But whenever Cuff speaks, it writes it out. It's like there's a small effect where like there's like a light that like kind of uncovers the text that Cuff is saying in the subtitles. I'm like, ooh, that feels good.
I saw that too.
So smooth. I'm like, fuck. I'm like, okay, game. If there was more small little details that you had in the game, I'd be like more swayed towards your side if you did more stuff like that. Like, that's such a cool effect.
Trying to think of what else there is to comment on the gameplay front. One thing that I very quickly learned that I don't need to do is that not only does the game like dot you with the different sorts of tasks and challenges and locked labyrinths and lookout points, and there are kind of like Ubisoft tower type equivalents in this game called belfries. But it also links on the map a little purple dot, at least it defaults to purple, for every single treasure chest. And at first I was like going from treasure chest to treasure chest, but most of them, or maybe all of them, contain just crafting materials. And I'm just like, all right, I don't need this. And so I'm guessing I can go into the map settings and turn off, like, you don't need to show me all these treasure chests. But the fact that it decided to put those all on the map just kind of really fills it up to kind of an obnoxious degree. That might just be a nitpick and just me like being a fossil and being like, I don't need all this information, when I can probably turn it off, and I just haven't done it yet.
The presentation of the map itself is kind of cool. It's like a 3D model rendering of like the world, but it's kind of like almost like a tabletop view of it.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of a neat effect that they have too. So there's like little small things here and there. Forspoken's like, oh, that's pretty neat. Like some of the tech that they use in this game. Like, all right. Like, I can see. I'm really curious. Like, I know they'll never do it, but I would love to see like what earlier iterations of Forspoken look like. Because like behind the scenes, like people have gained this understanding that like this game has like gone through like several redevelopment reworks like behind the scenes over the years. Like, and trying to struggle to find an identity of like what this game like has shaped, like what this game initially shaped up to be, and like all the current iterations and reiterations, and like what this game was until all up until the point of like what the final shipping product was. Like, I'm really interested to see like I'm sure like obviously the very, very base foundation of this game obviously was from that Agnes Philosophy tech demo way back when, and that was a very different tone and style. And seeing like, I wonder just like what the development rework looks like for this game, dude, over the years.
There was a few other little story-related things that I was thinking that the game could have done slightly differently. For instance, one of the things that the game does to a small extent is obviously Frey is from New York, and Cuff is not from Athia, but doesn't know what New York is either. So it's kind of strange. Like, where is Cuff from? That's kind of like the one of the lingering questions from the early onset of the game. There's a point in the game where you encounter like a character sneaks up on Frey. And Cuff says something like, there's a person underneath that mask, and Frey says, no shit, Sherlock. And I feel like they could have, Frey speaks like that pretty generally, where she's a potty mouth. She speaks with like not a ton of slang, but a little bit. And I feel like they could have played with that interplay more, where if she said no shit, Sherlock, and Cuff could have been something like, excuse me, who, or something like that. But it doesn't play it quite in that way. So there's a few things like that where it's like, oh, if you're gonna do it this way, at least have some fun with it, or at least make it like more coherent, where right now it just kind of feels like really incongruent. The things like the thing that they have kind of drilled on in a few times is that Frey is from New York, and Cuff keeps saying Newark, Newark instead of New York. And I felt like they could have made that more of a general. They only dial into that one joke a few times, but I felt like they could have made it more of a general interaction where Frey says something. And I guess this has showed up a few times when Frey interacts with some of the other characters in the city, where she says something and then has to explain what she means because it's a turn of phrase. But right now it almost feels ham-fisted and doesn't feel like it's fun, and it should be fun. And I don't exactly know what's missing. But it's just something where they went for something and it's just not quite landing for me.
Yeah, it's just that thing again of like even when it tries to like present that sort of like dialogue, and like it doesn't know how to deal with like certain like dynamics to make it at least, like there's a certain like understood thing that like that clicks with people, and people like that style of humor, but they know when to like when it's done well and if it's not hitting for them, like that like people don't have to like know exactly like the whole like dynamics of that. It's like but people are very, very keen on like, okay, I know when humor is hitting for me and it's not, and that I think for this game it's like it kind of it tries to like lead into that sort of humor, but it doesn't know how to deal with character dynamics, interactions to like really set it up for it at all, to be honest. Like it presents a thought there, but it doesn't follow through with it at the moment.
So I'm eager to so I'm currently playing 2 games at the moment. I'm still making my way through Fire Emblem Engage. I think I'm on chapter like 16 or 17. And then I started up this and I focused on this so I could talk about it on this episode of the podcast. But I'm actually kind of like, I'm enjoying again, this is like an apples and oranges thing. The reason I'm even putting these games in the same breath is that they released a week apart from each other. I'm enjoying Forspoken enough that I'm like, maybe I'll just play Forspoken today instead of more Fire Emblem, even though I do think I'm enjoying Fire Emblem more. I'm really curious, like I mentioned earlier, to get far enough in Forspoken. Once you've gotten through the hurdle of setting up the premise of the world and the character and just unlocking kind of like the gameplay systems and just getting to a point where you've got the multiple magic types and you know kind of what all the optional objectives are, and you start tiering up the magic levels, and there's little challenges that you can do to start decking out your gear or improving the crafting. And I kind of just want the game to open up, because once it does, I think there's some stuff here that you could really latch onto and have a lot of fun with. You just kind of have to, you almost have to just like pay into the game first, both literally because it's a $70 game, but also in terms of
it's such a large ass, because you're talking about like 6-7 hours in already. It's like when it opens up, it's like
once you pay $70 and once you get to the 6-hour mark, then it's pretty fun. So at least I'm hoping that's
a lot.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see like where the consensus of this game kind of lands once, because I think a lot of people are still working their way through it, and people we've obviously have had people like RPG Fan, I believe Digital Foundry and IGN also had a coverage of this game pre-release. So obviously those opinions are valid, but it'll be interesting just to see like where the general attitude of this game turns out, because I'm still kind of like, all right, same team as Final Fantasy 15.
I really wonder like how many people are like left to like really give it a chance, to be honest. Like I don't know. Like it feels like like on the surface it feels like so many people like just bounced off already. Like I don't know what like if it actually like becomes like an amazing game, like end game or something, like will there be like a crowd for it to be like, yeah, this is it's actually really good. It gets that sort of resurgence, like hypothetical resurgence. Like I don't know if it gets that.
And I'm still like, what I was going to say was Final Fantasy 15 had a strong premise and opening, but then completely fell off the rails at the end. Mm-hmm. And maybe there's no reason to expect that for Forspoken, but I'm interested. A lot of times open world games in general kind of have a hard time having a strong narrative pacing. And I'm wondering, it's like, all right, if Forspoken going to hit par on that, or is it also going to like, it starts out kind of on a shaky foot, not terrible, but not super endearing. It's okay. But is it going to get stronger as it gets towards the end, or is it just going to stay the course and kind of be the sort of thing that you either take it or leave it? And I'm not sure exactly why this game is kind of a hard sell in terms of its premise. And maybe it only is, maybe that's just my impression. I don't want to generalize it too much, but it just seems like it's a hard game to be excited for on premise alone. You kind of have to explain how the game works and how the systems fit together. And those sorts of things, rather than just saying I'm sold because of the premise or the trailer or the art style or the characters or the interactions or things like that. So it's one of those things where you kind of have to dig in, and we'll see if there's anything worth finding there, or if it's something where it's going to be like, nah, it was all right.
Ray's gonna, after a time skip, Ray's gonna have like a elder wizard powers and like a big ass witch hat.
I honestly don't know, like, if there's some sort of big twist where
I don't know,
yeah.
I'm kind of making shit up because FF15 had that time skip.
No, well, there's always like the sorts of archetypes that we've seen in other stories. Like Athia is actually New York 1,000 years in the future, or Cuff is a character from Frey's life, or this is how the real world and Athia interact. So I'm like, I don't know if there's anything that could come out that I'd be surprised by.
It's gonna turn into a Tales game. It's like the world of Athia and the Earth are like turned, like are actually facing towards each other, and like basically start to do about like collide into each other.
No, it'd be interesting to see, like, that we listen back to this podcast once one or both of us have finished this game.
And predictions.
Yeah, or something like that. Or actually, maybe it's just gonna play it straight and be like, nope, Athia is just fantasy. It's just it's just Narnia under a different name. But yeah, we will likely talk about Forspoken again on this podcast. I'm not exactly sure at what timing or pacing, because it kind of depends on how long it takes us to go through it. And obviously the early release schedule of this year is pretty crazy. I was looking ahead at the release calendar, and April is when it really seems like it kind of becomes like a big question mark in terms of the RPG release cadence specifically. So maybe once we get through all the releases in February and March, obviously at some point a review will be written and we'll cover it again at that point. So kind of up in the air. We don't know exactly what the game has in store or at what point we'll be talking about it again, but we giving our honest impressions of the opening hours of the game thus far. If you have different or similar impressions, go ahead and leave a comment on this podcast or on the YouTube video. Interested to hear what your thoughts are so far on Forspoken. Forspoken really was the main kind of topical release of the week, and we'd already spoken about Fire Emblem, I think 3 weeks in a row, so I think we're going to let that one lie for a bit. So actually, for the opening section of this podcast, the remaining 3 games that I have listed here are a bit of a hodgepodge, but I'm kind of okay with that. And one of these we've actually covered as it was announced last year. It was a big deal to Josh, and we made it kind of the headline of one of our summer podcasts in 2022, and that is an official English release of Witch on the Holy Night, as it was re-released for Switch, I believe digitally last year and physically this year. So yeah, Josh, yes, the Switch and PlayStation. So I'm going to hand this off to both Josh and Chow, because I know Josh has played this before, and I believe Chow is playing it now. He had just received his copy or copies.
No. I received the Japanese version back pretty late, like 2 weeks ago when I ordered it, because I used the most cheapest shipping possible. And then that's the price you pay for being cheap. But anyways, I just finished the game yesterday, and then at the same time I heard there was the limited edition physical. I'm like, gotta get it. It's a limited edition.
You gotta support.
And I gotta buy this game because there is some sequel bait in this game. And there's like this missing link, and I need to support it because I need to know what happens.
Is it that and also like it's like one of those things, like you want to support it, like, so convince Type Moon to like to like release more games internationally, because there's like a phenomenon. There's like the first like mainline Type Moon visual novel to like get an official English release, to be frank, after how many freaking years.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I'm still surprised there's no Melty Blood. I mean, not Melty Blood. Tsukihime remake announcement, like in English.
I mean, everyone, like, it's kind of what everyone wants to is holding their breath for. But Chow, like, what did you have you read this game before? Because this game originally came out like in 2012. It's like there's not a new story.
I read maybe just like the first chapter. Mm-hmm. It was like, okay, this is extremely hard Japanese to read.
Oh yeah, it's super hard. Holy shit!
Do I wait for the fan translation? It's like, okay, so I think the whole general consensus is that the fan translation have to give up because the official localization finished them before they did, because it took them like who knows how many years to get to like chapter 10.
Look, there's a whole thing behind the fan translation of Witch of the Holy Night. Like before you got an official release, like when people are trying to fan translate it, like It's not like just because it's like the length of the script, yeah, it is, but it's not like as lengthy as like some other ones. So it's not like it's like difficult. Let's say, of course, it's extremely difficult. Maybe like lengthwise, it's not like it's not as insurmountable as like how Fate Stay Night was back there, the original Tsukihime back in the day. Like those scripts are still pretty more lengthy than this one, but it's just like kind of like the probably a lot of drama behind the scenes, like over the years.
Yeah, I was like reading it up. There was like a different group each time when there's like a new chapter comes out or something.
Yeah, and then I think there's like a Russian translation that at some point, or like French translation that like fan translation that people were trying to work off of. So it was a whole saga like throughout the years, like a decade in the making, really.
I think the current scene is now they're trying to like even like redo the current translation and add like the voice patch to the PC port that was, or like PC original release. I think that's what's going on in the community hacking scene. But I don't think we get too far into that.
I don't know, but yeah, but what did you think, man? I mean, like, obviously now that you've read the whole story, like, it's to me, it's like it's still awesome. I still really, really enjoyed it. But
Okay,
how did it go for you?
Okay, so the beginning starts off very slow. I think everyone can kind of agree with that, but I don't mind slow because, like, if you're looking like in like Fate Night Stay or some other of Natsuverse kind of stories, you hate the slice of life moments sort of thing, but here it's actually very good. I actually like the slice of life moments. What is it? I think there's like only like one character that I don't like in this game, and that's the main character's co-worker. The one that he works at with the Chinese restaurant.
Oh yeah, that dude.
That dude is like the most forgettable dude. It's like, hey man, we're gonna go out and get some girls. What do you think?
He's a classmate. Yeah. He's your typical like your typical clown. Your typical dude bro friend. Yeah.
Yeah, the classmate clown. It's like, but yeah, he's the only forgettable character. But I love all the characters in this game technically besides him. I think I think the best thing they ever added is the voice acting.
I was really impressed with the voice act. Like usually I'm like with Adam, like him and I share very similar views of like you don't need to like add voice acting to like make this better. Like SMT Nocturne, for example, the re-release. It's like like that game is like really, really, really like effective already without voice acting. So what could voice acting really bring? But I was like you're about to say, like, child, like I was really impressed, like with the voice acting too. After I was done with this re-release, go on.
Yeah, like with the voice acting, like those battle scenes are like way more epic than it needs to be. Like there's like these fight scenes that it's like with the puppet and all this thing. It's like, oh my god, this is so cool.
It's a pretty interesting visual novel, right? Because like the battle scenes are like they're like not the main highlight, like but they are very, very spectacular events when they happen, but there's very, very, very few of them like throughout
there's little battle scenes in this. Like there's like probably like only like 3 major battles in this entire series, and everything else is just kind of like slice of life and character interactions. So let's kind of rewind a little bit, like go back who our characters are. So in this game, there's technically 3 main characters, I would say, right?
Yeah.
It's the trio. So we have this guy that comes from the mountains and he went to the city. So this guy is kind of like emotionless, and because he's raised in the mountains, he doesn't know life too well. He's like the purest, most innocent, ignorant person there is.
Yeah, I wouldn't say he's like emotionless, but he's very like kind of foreign to the whole thing because he moved from the mountains to the city, and like he's still like when you're interacting, he's not like showing emotion. Like you can see like he's like satisfied or anything, but he's very subdued.
Yeah, like there will be like some scenes that will be like, hey, I just saw some somebody just get killed up there. It's like, is that normal in the city? And
yeah, this guy's name is Sojuro. That's his name, and it's like he's kind of like your typical like on his part his part of the story is like he's trying to get acclimated to like the city life after only living in the mountains without electricity for like pretty much his entire life up until that point.
I think the most hilarious thing about this guy is he has like 1,000 part-time jobs or something. He always has a different job every time like the character talks to him.
Yeah, he's great. Like, that's like trying to. He's a very much like a go-getter to like make things work, trying to survive. Like he just has like a billion part-time jobs, different part-time jobs on top of like attending school. He's that sort of dude. He's like, you talk to him, he's like at a different part-time job every time. It's like, all right.
It's never consistent. It's like, is he still working at the place? No. It's like, okay, then there is Aoko Azuki. If you play Melty Blood, you'll see her. She's actually a playable character there. I kind of like. Oh, join.
Oh, we got a James.
Go for it, Chow. We'll introduce James later.
Okay, no worries. So like I know her from like Melty Blood and the parody Tsukihime anime, the Carnival
Carnival Phantasm. Yeah.
Yes, I know her from there as the groomer. She's like trying to groom the main character because she's like this main character's master in that. So that left like a complete wrong impression of what this character is supposed to be, right?
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, she's like this really hot-tempered student council president, and she is like the heir to the Azuki family, and she's supposed to like know like the magic, and magic is very important in the Natsuverse.
So. Yeah, she comes basically from like a esteemed family that like that part of their lineage is like carrying on like the magician's like legacy pretty much like so like when you get to a certain age you can become an heir to like inherit like the magic of that family, and magic is not like very loose in this like world. It's actually very, very important and very like exclusive to like certain individuals. It's not like free form or like anyone can use it. It's like only very restrictive to like certain like bloodlines.
I don't know, like the way they describe it, it sounds like Bitcoin mining. It's like once someone like mined it out, it's like you cannot get it, and it belongs to that person.
That's certainly
like the way
a way to describe it.
That's the way, like the way I was reading it. That's how I was looking at it.
It's I mean this game, like for better or worse, like you like it'll kind of make you like sort of invested in like how magic works in the Natsuverse, whether like it's Fate Stay Night or Tsukihime or any of his other like kind of like tangential like spin-off works from those. Like one of the consistent things about this like the universe that like Nasu like involves himself in and like writes in is like the rules of magic, and it's like, and that's very clearly laid out like in this visual novel, and like it's never really explained in much detail anywhere else. So people who didn't like read this visual novel are always very murky about the details of how magic works in his works up until this point.
Because that is described in very good detail on how it works. So like, it's basically called like magecraft is like just a cheap imitation, and everyone's just trying to farm for the real magic, which hardly anyone has farmed.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, that's how they were describing it.
Anyway, get like we're getting off topic. So the third main character.
The third main character is Alice. She's basically Aoko's partner in crime. She's like this. How do I say it? She doesn't express much, but
yeah, she's the one that's like emotionless for sure. She's a natural born witch. She's like kind of Aoko's roommate and mentor. And they both live up in like in this like this manor from Alice's manor up in like the mountains away from the city, from there, because like one of the main rules of like magicians and witches and so forth is like no one can know that like you use magic. There are reasons why, like they go into the whole explanation of like why, but like it is of the utmost secrecy that like no one must know that like you can use magic. That is like one of the main plot points of this game.
Magic the Masquerade.
Yes.
Like, is it too much into spoilers to say what happens in chapter 5-ish?
I mean the very basic
setup. I'm going to read this eventually.
Yeah. I mean like the like there's not a spoiler to say that like there's a certain there are certain like one of the main things about this game is like someone witnesses that they used magic, and then that's kind of like one of the main plot points of the game.
The whole plot point is this: it's just a very innocent bystander that witnesses an event, and now
things happen. there are certain ramifications, and like for the whole entire game, and like it does it frames it pretty well, and like and how it goes about it. So it's like I know you want to talk about the story, Chow, but like one of the things about this game is this, like,
it's the story. You can't.
yeah, it's so good. It's really good. It's really awesome. More people should read it. I guess that's kind of the main thing. And it's an interesting tale. Like that, like I say this again and again about the game, and like when it was announced, I don't know, like when the re-release was announced and all that, is like you don't have to like know of like any of like Nasu's works. You don't have to know about Fate Stay Night. You don't have to worry about Tsukihime. You don't have to worry about Melting Blood. You don't have to worry about any of that shit to like appreciate the story on its own. You can read this story totally standalone from everything else and have an awesome time with it. That's kind of like the nice thing about it, and like one of the main strengths about it is like it's totally separate from everything else. Like you can go dive deeper if you want after this, but you can just appreciate the story on its own without any strings attached to it.
Yeah, I think that's a good selling point. I don't know, like I'm thinking like watching it like the Garden of Sinners after this. But I feel like I want to watch it with my friends. Like I don't want to watch it by myself. So.
I need to rewatch those for some time now, but I have no idea when I can get around to it. But that's a fantastic series of films to get around to. But yeah, I've been like I'm with you, Chow. I'm just really surprised at like how much the voice acting has like really enhanced my enjoyment of this game.
Like I think like just having like Haruko Tomatsu as Ako is like god tier, and then you get like the Stone Cold Hanakana, like that's like the best kind of role she does, like the Stone Cold voice that she does.
Alice is as Hanakana Kana Hanazawa. It's a really really interesting role that like you don't really get to see too much of her often, like in that kind of role, but it really really works.
It's like what she's best at, but she's kind of like used to like doing like either like over Genki kind of characters.
I love that they got Yusuke Kobayashi though for Sojuro. He works super well for that role.
He's a god tier voice actor too. Like he's he did like Subaru from ReZero, so he's very famous for that because there's like certain scenes in that show where he had to do like an imitation of other characters because he got possessed, and it was like that voice acting is so good. So having there.
They also got Toshinari Fukamichi for Tobimaru, which is one of like one of the student council members that serves under Aoko in
the vice president.
School. Yeah, he's actually really cool. Like I really like the way they depicted him this time around. Like, the first time when I read the story, I didn't think much of it, but like the voice that they gave him really added to him. I really like him in the re-release now.
Like I said, there is no character you'll dislike in this except for the main character's coworker. He's just forgettable, I guess. Right.
Yeah. But like, it's a really cozy story. Like you mentioned, like it's like there's a lot of like really great slice of life. And when I think about like character writing, like in visual novels, like this does it so effectively because it gives everyone a very well-rounded like take on them, and like you really get a strong sense of like why they think the way that they do, and like it provides a strong sense of like how they were raised as well. Like you understand why they believe that the things that they do, that they hold up the morals and values the way that they do because of the way that they were raised, the way that they're characterized. And I think that this game really, really does an amazing job at that. It's like you're wondering at first, like, why is this character like doing the things that they're doing, and then the way that they explain it and why that they're doing it, it's like, okay, that's very interesting why that they're reacting this way to certain things in this game. And it's like I think that's the if there's like one thing that this game does really well, more so than like other things and like other types of media, it's like it's that angle of it.
Like okay, so like when you think about it, this kind of like feels like the prototypes for Fate Night Stay with the school interactions. But here, like it feels just like the writing is just a lot better there. Do you think it's because Natsu went back and kind of like rewrite it and make improvements, or do you think that's kind of like how you originally envisioned it? Do you think?
I mean, when you think about like, I wrote up a feature on this game when it was first like announced. The re-release was announced, and like, and I don't know exactly like what sort of rewriting happened to like what we got in the final version, but like Witch on the Holy Night is like the story concept itself is like the very first thing Nasu ever wrote. Like it was never like the original version of Witch on the Whole Night was like never publicly published. It was only like kind of like shared with like his friends at the time. But like the core concepts from what we understand is like remains the same as like in terms of like magic and like the terms of the main story. Like I don't know exactly like what sort of like things like he decided to rewrite or write as like the as time went on. But from what we understand, is like a lot of like what was written here is like kind of almost largely intact, like foundationally. So I don't. So like at some like it's interesting and funny to think about. It's like when he wrote Tsukihime and Fate Stay Night, which did get like publicly released. You know, like the fundamentals of magic in both of those games were based on like a largely unpublished work from Witch on the Holy Night, the original draft of it.
Sorry to think about it. But yeah, like I don't know. Like I'm just saying, like in my opinion, I just feel like I hated like the school, like the slice of life moments in like Fate Night Stay. You know, it's like they're just not interesting at all. Or maybe that's just like watching an anime form where they're just not capturing like the character motivation like when you're reading it here, because here it'll describe what makes each character tick, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you're not getting that if you're watching adaptation, right? You know,
yeah, I mean, like it's a total like inverse of like what you expect from Nasu's works, especially like Fate Stay Night. You know, like um Shiro is not like Sojiro. You know, Sojiro is a lot more competent in like the day-to-day activities, and he's more competent the way he conducts himself, because more because it's out of like kind of like not ignorance, but more like that's just his personality. He's like more built for it, unlike Shiro, which like he's like kind of like your more typical high school student. It's kind of like more tender on the inside, while Sojiro is more like firm, but like and more like intact mentally in a way. Like more of the he exhibits more of that fortitude, which Shiro doesn't, like in Fate Stay Night, and like Shiki as well, also in Tsukihime, right? Like Sojiro once again is kind of like more competent in like the day to day like activities, and like not less tender, but has more of that fortitude compared to like Shiki and Tsukihime. So it's kind of like an interesting like inverse of like character archetypes and like and what we think of like kind of like where these like protagonists start at like at the beginning of their stories. Like Shiki and Shiro, kind of less competent than Sojiro, but the way they develop, well, you'll just have to read their stories to see how that goes. But yeah, I mean, like you said, hopefully this leads to more Tide Moon works getting officially released in the West down the road. Hopefully Nasu gets around to like writing and releasing like the follow up to Witch on the Holy Night before like we all perish. I don't know.
I don't know like what's the current state is. Like, okay, so Reddit says 110k doesn't seem like much, but when you think of visual novels, 110k for the like the previous sales number, that's a lot for
a lot. That's a really respectable number for visual novels. That's like don't let people like people's like public outlook like fool you. That's an impressive number for modern visual novels today for 110k, and
like
then
it's still growing. Like
Tsukihime remake like just did like I think 500k alone like in Japan, and that's like an unheard like absurd number, like you know, in modern visual novel sales. Like that's really really good.
Yeah, like I don't know. I need that sequel. There's like some missing parts in between. I need what happens. I need to know.
I forgot how many parts Nasu envisioned. Which of the I think it was like 3 parts. I forgot.
Yeah, that's like what I heard from a Twitter post, but like I never heard directly from Natsu. I don't know what he had.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm ever gonna like live that long to like read all of it. I would love to, but I don't know at this rate. I don't know.
I mean, you waited 10 years for English localization. Anything's possible now.
Yeah, it's Pandora's box has like kind of been unleashed. Like I think about this, like made that Super Robot Wars is now like kind of like a international like release, right? Like you can't like release another thing from like Type Moon or the Super Robot Wars series of like they have to be released in the West now. Like you've opened that box, you're not allowed to close it. Please don't.
Well, it's cool that we've had 2 chances to talk about this game with back when it was first revealed that it was going to happen last year, and now Josh already has read it previously, and then Chow getting hands-on with the re-release just this last couple of weeks. And then, as you heard halfway through that discussion, we did introduce and welcome James back to the podcast.
Sorry for being a bit late, everyone.
No, it's no problem. And actually, your timing is quite good because I believe this next game that we're going to be talking about, it was a shadow drop this last week. And it's not really in the RPG space, but it's something that I know has been kind of highly regarded and has seemed to take a life of its own over the last 7 days. And that is the surprise release of Hi-Fi Rush from Tango Gameworks. Now, I'm going to need to rely on you guys to kind of explain this to me a little bit because I was kind of under a rock back when this shadow dropped and got released, and really great word of mouth. People are saying that this could be one of the best of the year and no one was expecting it. So, first of all, I want to make sure I'm not presuming incorrectly. James, you have been playing Hi-Fi Rush, correct?
Yes.
All right. I'll just hand it off to you then. So, like, what is this game and why has it all of a sudden been like vogue to talk about in the last week?
So it's kind of like a mix between like a character action game like a Devil May Cry or Bayonetta, a rhythm game, and a 3D like a linear like platformer. It's really interesting because it's like the entire game is about moving to this beat. And the game, like everything in the game moves to that beat. So you can use that as sort of a guide for when you need to like input your commands. So like you have the main character, Chai, even has this little like robot cat friend, 808, who like kind of acts as like a metronome in the like right next to him. And also lets you know which of your partners that you eventually get is selected. So when you use the button to call a partner in, like in the middle of a combo or for something in the level, you'll know. You don't need to check. You can just see, oh, it's blue, so it's this one, or green, it's this one, so on and so forth. This was shadow dropped during Microsoft's Developer Direct, I think it was called.
Yeah, Developer Direct.
Yeah, Developer Direct. And they are like, before it was announced, they said, oh yeah, we're going to be showcasing 4 games today: Redfall, Forza, Minecraft Legends. What was the 4th one? But anyways, there ended up being a 5th one in so nobody knew that Tango was working on this, especially
4th one was Elder Scrolls Online.
Ah, gotcha. But yeah, nobody knew that Tango was working on this, and a lot of people were really surprised that they even released something like this, because the last the games they've released have been the Evil Within 1 and 2, and most recently like Ghostwire Tokyo, all of which have a similar like horror vibe to them. And out of nowhere, they just completely shadow drop a game that it wouldn't be like it wouldn't be misplaced to compare it to something like Beautiful Joe or something. It's really interesting.
Yeah, it's definitely like the first of their portfolio. Like have this color profile, this color palette. It's such a nice upbeat vibe to it. Like it honestly makes me happy just playing it, just like seeing it. It's like because we've seen like so many games like kind of take on this downtrodden sort of like visual style to them. While this one's like very full of life, very vibrant. Very nice.
Between the vibes and the gameplay and like pretty much everything about it, people have been making jokes about how this feels straight out of like, it feels like a GameCube or a PS2 or an original Xbox game. And I can completely see what they mean, because it definitely has a bit of that like feeling. Like people like when they were playing it realized, this reminds me of not just a Capcom game, but a Clover game. So people looked into it, and it turned out that the director is John Johannes, but the lead game designer on the game, based off the credits, was actually like he was the director of Beautiful Joe too.
Oh wow!
So, well, I guess that makes sense then.
Yeah, it shows this game the basic setup for this game is like you're this main character Chai. He's off to like kind of be a rock star. That's his dreams and aspirations. So he kind of finds himself in like in a weird situation where like there's like this society that he's in where it's like they're kind of like rated almost, and like he's kind of like bottom of the barrel. He's like destined to be a garbage collector, and like and like they kind of retool their workers to become like robots. But by chance, his MP3 Walkman player gets dropped on him right before he's about to get like pressed to become a robot, and like what sort of happens is like he gets his robot arm, and like his MP3 Walkman player is like imprinted into like directly into like his chest. So like that all justifies like why it's a rhythm game. It's like narrative. It makes sense narratively. Like you're going to the beat of like whatever's playing in your chest, and obviously like you're considered a defect, so everyone's like out to get you. And that's like kind of like the base, the premise of the first stage. So it's like a lot of the first stage, like kind of introducing you to the concepts. That's all. I've only beaten the first stage, but it made a very strong impression on me already. Of like you have your typical switching up between light and heavy attacks, and they all go by a beat. So like there's like a certain beat that that's tutorialized to you.
Yeah, there's a lot of different combos. There's a lot of different abilities you eventually get access to. Like you can get a parry, you can juggle enemies with one of your partners, you can there's all sorts of things. There's a bunch of different like air combos. There's like eventually you get access to combos that don't end on a beat hit, so you can like if you're in the middle of the air, you can use that combo and then just continue on because like so the way the combat works is that most combos, and again, since it's a rhythm game, it's like rhythm based, and there's some combos where it's like they kind of contextualize like how like if you do some combos in like character action games like Devil May Cry, sometimes there's going to be combos where you want to like hold off attacking in the middle of a string for just a little bit to get a slightly different like combo. That's like contextualized here as like, oh, you're it's like you're doing a rest, like a musical rest, and then you're continuing on the combo that way. And a lot of these combos end with something called a beat hit, which is kind of like a wicked weave from Bayonetta 2, where you end with a super powered attack if you like time this basically this QTE like if you time it right. And then eventually you get access to stuff like, oh, you can expend some of your meter to use your partner with the beat hit to do like a kind of like a finisher with them that's flashier and does more damage. And then there's a lot to the combat system. It's kind of insane.
Yeah, and it's a lot of fun to learn. But like even like if you're like me and you're like not like the best with like rhythm games, like being on the beat, like being on the beat like gets you like bonus damage and it's very helpful. But like even if like you're missing like the beat sometimes, like you're not like super punished for it or anything. Like you can still do your combos and still like play it like a character action game, and like and you don't have to like be like a master at rhythm games to like kind of like just be competent at this game. Me, I'm like still like not like great at like doing like the just timings or anything like that. But like it's still very playable to me. It's still very fun, and it's like it still feels so gratifying. Like your hits still feel have that sort sense of weight, and they can feel like your hits are like doing impact to the enemy and like doing damage, and like you're not being you're not totally left out in the dust if like you can't like get it always right, like to the beat, which is nice. Like I like I feel like some games like heavily punish you for like not being able to like be always on the beat. I think of like stuff like like I think of like it kind of reminds me of this kind of like a weird a weird comparison, but like I think of like DMC Devil May Cry of like not having like the right weapon types for certain enemies that they just bounce off. So it's like, oh, like it feels really bad that like my weapons just bounce off because like I didn't have like the right weapon type equipped. It's like no, like this one, like you can still like hit your enemies and it still feels good to like just playing it like more like a standard action game. But just really fun, and I'm really uh looking forward to like playing more of it down the line.
And the very last game we have listed here to talk about is not a new one, but just another game that we figured, hey, we'll talk about on this podcast while we have an opening to. And that is something that Chow's been playing, River City Girls 2. So Chow, this is kind of like compared to the Witch of the Holy Night, this seems like complete opposite end of the spectrum. So why did you decide to start playing River City Girls 2 recently?
Okay, has anyone here played River City Ransom where they don't really know what the hell that
is? I know what River City
I know what it is, but I've never played it.
Okay, so me and my cousin played the original back a long time ago, and we beat it like complete inside out. It is basically kind of like an RPG beat them up game, right? You basically beat the shit out of enemies, they'll puke up, and you collect their lunch money, you use it to buy food or whatever shops you see, and use it to upgrade your characters. And the food gives you different stats depending what place you shop at, right? And you can even buy like all kinds of weird equipment, and your character will start to become like very overpowered. So that's kind of like the gameplay in a nutshell. So when they made River City Girls, we're like, this is like the closest thing we got to like a sequel to the West, because a lot of the games that were around like in the Super Nintendo era, they were never localized and released here till like now. So there's a lot of missing games, and I guess I would see this as like the closest thing to a sequel. And we beat the first game together, and then now they made a second game. And so anyway, so when they made a second game, me and my cousin went and get it, because if you buy like the physical edition in Japan, apparently they bundled the first and the second game together. So it was a very good deal, because it was like 45 USD and you get 2 games in one. It's a very good deal. But anyways, we went through and played this entire game local co-op, and we have some gripes with the second game. There's a lot of performance issue in this game.
Oh, I thought they didn't iron them out still. Oh man.
Okay, they ironed them out for every system but the Switch.
Oh, sick.
So we
were love to see it.
I don't know what it plays like in single player, because we refuse to play this game in single player. Our rules in a beat them up game is that we play them locally co-op with friendly fire on. It's the best way to play beat them up games. When you get mad at your buddy, you just kill them. It's the total right way to play it.
This game's been out for a while, though. I'm kind of surprised it hasn't been patched yet. Like, I mean, I assume maybe it's been patched, but maybe not patched enough.
Not patched enough. Like, I don't know. Like, we have some very awful experience playing together, because a lot of reviewers I heard they were only playing on single player, so they're probably not experiencing the shit that we see. Like, sometimes the game drops down to like 15 FPS. Sometimes like there was like input lag so bad that my button didn't respond for like 5 seconds.
You'd love to hear it from a beat 'em up.
And I'm like, oh my god, it's like, what is going on here?
Will you guys migrate to another system, or you're just gonna write it out?
We're just gonna write it out. My cousin doesn't have any other systems but a Switch, so we had to be on the Switch, But like, besides that, like as a sequel for this game, it's more like it's kind of the same old. I think people were complaining that the first game was too short, so they made like this game had like a ton of side quests in order to get to your destination, like actual RPG. You'll be like trying to get to like one destination, and they'll be like, hey, it's like this place is blocked, but I want you to go backtrack like miles away and collect 6 ghost pepper to burn down this vine to get through. It's like a lot of these like backtracking fetch quests to like draw out the game like 4 times longer than it needs to be.
Jesus.
Like, some people like that, but we sure didn't. So it always plays the same, but like I think the combos are a lot more streamlined, so they're a lot easier to perform. Like if because
I want to. I mean, not really related to like River City Girls too, but like when I think of like a River City Ransom, I want to get that Three Kingdoms River City Ransom game down the line. Like that looks fun. It's like on Steam.
Like, a lot of Kunio games are usually pretty decent, right? Or Kunio is
I forgot. Is Kunio River City Ransom or no?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Kunio is okay. So back when they were I think the original game River City Ransom was localized, or the original Japanese title was like some hot blood downtown brawl. I think that was the original Japanese title or something. Like it was translated literally or something. It got localized. It's called River City Ransom because it's like the whole city got renamed to River City, and all the characters got Americanized names, like from Kunio to Alex, Ricky to Ryan.
The 4 kids. The 4 kids formula. So good.
They all got different names, and
What's your 4 kids name, Chow? What do you think if 4 kids were to localize you? What would be your name?
Chad.
Chad.
I like
no,
that thing.
I was making dumb jokes back when I was watching Gundam back in the day. If our kids got hold of Gundam Seed, Kira's name is gonna be Keith. Oh, that's gonna be his name.
Hell yeah!
He's gonna be Americanized.
How do you localize Atherin, dude? How would you do?
I like how this is actually going to be topical for the thing we'll talk about next in a small way.
But yeah, like, oh yeah, they even so if you're into like Data East games, there's a lot of cameos and forefall from Data East reference. Like there is characters from Combat Tribes. That's a beat 'em up game from Data East. We
oh
love
god,
this
yeah,
game.
I barely like recognize that. I'm like, oh yeah, I kind of recognize that name.
Me and my cousin love this game because it's kind of brutal for Super Nintendo days. Because every time you beat the shit out of someone, you immediately kill them. You had to smack their head in the floor. So that's how you play Combat Tribes. It's pretty violent for a Super Nintendo game if you think about it. But
yeah, that's definitely something that would not fly back in the day.
But then there is there's obviously a lot of Double Dragon reference in this game. One of the characters that you get to play in River City Ransom Girls 2 is Marion. Marion is the girlfriend from the Double Dragons, the Billy and Jimmy's girlfriend. She gets kidnapped in the first game, and then she gets fucking straight up murdered in the second game.
They did like some cameo things for River City Girls too, like some like summons, like so there's like some Guilty Gear characters, like I think like Soul and
I haven't encountered Soul yet, but a lot of the shopkeepers are like referenced from other game, and I didn't really get all of it. Like this game has a lot of fourth wall humor and a lot of like meta jokes, right? Like some of them might not land. It's like because it's extremely like fourth wall breaking, right? Will be like one of the characters will be talking about their sad story, giving you like this long flashback. Like, oh yeah, that sounds cool. It's like
do the Forspoken characters show up in this one?
What would that be?
Frey and Cuff. Do they show up in River City Girls too?
No.
All right. Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of fourth wall humor, and that might not sit well for everybody. Because I think what pissed off a lot of people with the first game, even though it's kind of like really well received, it's the meta ending. There was a very like kind of ending that pissed off a lot of people. I'm not sure they patched that ending out or something, but the ending was like this fourth wall meta joke where the main character's girlfriend from the original, like from the Super Nintendo days, were the secret bosses, and the character that you're playing are these like girls that are just obsessed with their boyfriends. They're not their actual girlfriends, and they beat the shit of the OG girlfriend from the Super Nintendo game. That's basically the humor, and when the guy sees the girl, they're like, "Who the hell are you guys?" You know. That's kind of like
if you don't have the context, that sounds cold. Okay.
Yeah, so that's kind of like the original ending from the original, and that pissed off a lot of people.
Yeah, I can see that if you don't have that context. Okay.
Because the context, they beat up the secret boss, which is the OG girlfriends that were never localized, and that's kind of like the ending. And there's a lot of things that I don't know, like that ending even kind of rubs me the wrong way in the sequel. Like, is that canon? Is that not canon? Like, I don't even know. Like at this point.
Yeah, it's like they've like kind of broken your trust in them in some aspects because they did. That's like, oh, what's stopping them from doing it again? I won't be fooled again.
And now, like when the sequel starts, like we started as the guys, right? We play as Kunio and Riki, and we go out, and they're like, I'm not even sure that's their girlfriends anymore. It's like they're like, and like, the cutscenes, like there's certain cutscenes in the game. If you're like, if it's a cinematic scene, only the girls are there, so I'm guessing the guys are not even canon. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know, like it's just
that sounds wild.
It's just like weird. So I don't know. That's our impression in a nutshell. It's basically same as like the first game, but it's expanded upon with a lot of fetch quests and backtracking. And
we'd love to hear from Vita buffs.
And it's like you might like that or you might not like that. It's also has a lot of performance issues.
I was gonna say also it doesn't run well on Switch, but then you caught that at the very end.
So yeah, but it is still a decent game, just not quite perfect.
Well, thank you, Josh, Chow, and James for talking about some of the games that you've been playing this week, even though I know only one of them, Forspoken, is really in our coverage window. But kind of cool.
Thank you, Brian, for sharing Forspoken with us. You got it.
I kind of just want to, pay my dues and kind of get through it before February hits. So we'll see if I'm able to do that.
What does that mean? Pay your dues? Are you being punished for something that you're not telling us?
I just feel like I don't want to be in the place where it's like, yeah, Forspoken, this Luminous Productions Square Enix game came out, but I don't want to cover it. So I'm not going to, I don't know. Maybe I'm a boiled frog in that sense.
Just got to bribe you.
Yeah, pay $70.
Hey, I had a voucher. I only paid $55. What a bargain. And then the thing that I mentioned about talking about 4Kids being surprisingly topical for the very next thing we're going to be talking about here. Before we go into the news section, which is pretty light this week, we did have one feature go up on the site for another January release that we haven't talked about in a couple weeks, because I don't think anyone here has played it or really intends to strongly. And that is, of course...
I'm gatekept. I'm sorry, I'm not qualified.
That, of course, is One Piece Odyssey. So released probably the first major RPG release of the year, but a lot of us just didn't make space for it. Luckily, Paige from one of our site contributors was able to look at One Piece Odyssey and put up her review on the site. I will not speak for her. I would recommend that you go and read her review for One Piece Odyssey, but at a high level, it seems like it's a game that's hard to recommend for anyone that isn't a One Piece fan. And even then, if you are a One Piece fan, there's certain oddities that I guess can be kind of frustrating. In, like, for instance, this game cannot cleanly, no one expected it to be canonical, but not only that, but it doesn't cleanly fit anywhere. Like, this is where this could have happened because of what characters say or which characters are missing. I don't have enough One Piece background to know about that, but in Paige's review, she talks about how it's like one of the old, like, non-canon Bleach or DBZ movies where it can't have existed anywhere because nothing lines up properly. Also, the fact that there are certain parts where if you're a One Piece fan, there's certain scenes that she wishes were playable but are relegated to cutscenes. And then if you're not familiar with One Piece, the amount of onboarding they do really isn't sufficient. So it's kind of this game that doesn't feel like it's trying to be for fans, but also for newcomers. At least that's my impression, having read through her review.
She's also just not a big fan of just the RPG progression and combat, just like the game itself.
Yeah, she describes it as bland. So not terrible, but just unfortunately still waiting for that, like, big major licensed RPG. I feel like when this game was first announced, we're like, it's going to be the fairy tale RPG, only One Piece this time. And unfortunately, it seems like it kind of fell in that same sort of bucket where it's like, yeah, it's a fun IP RPG, but doesn't really expand past that limitation. But that's just
a nice thing for One Piece people, at least. If you're really into One Piece, I'm sure this is a nice treat for you. Maybe, But when Paige told me, "Oh, this will make sense if you watch 600 to 700 episodes of the anime," I'm like, "Cool. I'm never playing this game."
Of course, that's just one person's impression, but that's all a review is. So go ahead and give Paige's review on One Piece a read up on the site. And maybe in the future, one of us will play through it, or we'll get Paige on the podcast, or we'll talk about it, way down the line at the end of the year. We'll see if we have time to make space for One Piece again. But a fun little curiosity. It's kind of cool to see a big RPG with, Bandai Namco's backing behind it. Unfortunately, it just seems like it's a little bit kind of not for anyone that isn't quite already a diehard fan of the IP. But we have the review up on the site if you're interested.
I need my Bleach Odyssey. How about that?
Yeah.
Didn't I say back then that it can't be good because I have never played a good RPG adaptation from a manga or anime.
What is the best shonen anime or RPG adaptation?
Ooh, that's tough, dude. I don't know. Is it? I don't know.
It sort of reminds me of. It's not quite the
Dragon Ball Z Legacy of Goku 2.
Ooh, okay.
Probably.
Maybe.
But it sort of reminds me of like back in the HD, like when HD consoles first released, like the PS3 and the Xbox 360. Any sort of like superhero game, like prior to that point, was just like really bad. Like superhero games just sucked. And then like Arkham Asylum came out and was actually like, this is pretty good. Like no one expected that game to be good. I remember the lead up to it. People were just like, oh, it's just some junky Batman game from a studio in England that no one knows.
Hey man.
Well, what about Spider-Man 2 on the PS2?
I was thinking Spider-Man PS1. I'm gonna bet Spider-Man PS1 to the death. I rented that game. Actually, I don't know if I rented it or I owned it, but man, I played the shit out of it.
Spider-Man 2 I'll take, but Spider-Man 1 or Spider-Man on the PS1, I don't know.
What is this? Man. I was gonna say, what is the Superman 64 of the modern era? Is there such a thing?
There is that Witch game on bicycles that came out on the Switch, like at around the Switch's launch, is basically literally just like Superman 64.
Yeah, but is it a superhero game?
No. I was thinking like Super Neptunia RPG or something like that.
Dang. That's just a terrible Valkyrie profile ripoff that like missed the point in every respect. Man, you're just reminding me that game. It tries to do the Valkyrie profile battle system, but only one character can attack at a time.
What's the point?
Exactly. So sick.
And with that, we'll move into the news section of this podcast, which is pretty light, so this will hopefully be pretty quick. The major news of this week is an announcement of a re-release of a cult classic tactical RPG. I hope I pronounced this right. Yggdra Union. Now, I might need to borrow some expertise from Josh or Adam here. When I see Yggdra Union, and I'll go into the details of this re-release in a second, I recognize the title, but I don't have a latch on like what this game is. Like, did anyone play the initial release of this game?
I think I only played a little bit of the Game Boy Advance version.
Yeah, I mean, like which initial release? You have a Game Boy Advance version, the PSP version. Yes to all of the above. The Yggdra Union came out like around 2006-ish, I want to say. Okay. And that was like the original GBA version. It was I think it was published in the West by Atlas at the time.
Yep.
Yeah. So this is a really cool like tactical RPG that like it very much like when you think of like the presentation style, you might think of like Advanced Wars when there's like when times split screening like your attacks to other opponents. It's just like a very, very solid like fun time. Like like I don't think there's like anything that it does like anything super like novel now. When I think about like its gameplay systems, but like it was just like it was a great game on Game Boy Advance. It was a great game on PlayStation Portable.
And then here's the lead that I buried. Yggdra Union, Will Never Fight Alone, is coming to PC on February 6th. And here's the strange part: via Steam Early Access. Even though it's a game that is like 17 years old or something like that. And that's because
even weirder.
Go ahead.
Sorry. It's even weirder because they're outright saying, yeah, the port itself is basically going to be finished. We're just spending the early access period to do like finishing touches on it, get some feedback for whatever features and like bug reports that are coming in, which essentially means that when this PC port drops, it's going to be about as probably as bare bones as some like Japanese PC port, like indie game PC ports have been in the past, but they're like committing to bringing it up to snuff.
That doesn't sound so bad conceptually.
Yeah, so Yggdra Union was part of like a series of games like people called or referred to as the Department Heaven games, and there's like these are headed by Shinichi Ito over there, and this was like kind of like the second one of those Department Heaven games, and like I guess like in terms of gameplay, like when I think about like there are other games that have come out like that have tried this, but like back then it was actually kind of novel for the time where you do have like some control over units, but like it's not like a Fire Emblem or Final Fantasy Tactics or any sort of like where you're like meticulously like controlling every single unit. You kind of watch these battles play out depending on like the strategy formations that you put on them, and then you can like activate like cards during like the battle to like kind of shift strategies and so forth. And like the strategy formations that you make are like called like unions in the game. So like in that respect, the strategy RPG aspect, it's like an indirect form of strategy RPG in this game where like your pre-planning and planning is like sort of more important than like the every like meticulous move that you do in it. So Yeah, Sting. Like the interesting thing about the Sting release on Steam, which is really really exciting, and I'm very happy about the news. Is like this is all being done by Sting themselves. The like even the publishing of it. So it makes you think that like are we gonna see like a new English translation of this game due to this new release? Because I can't imagine they'll like Atlas will allow them to use their script of it. You know.
Well, actually, here's the funny thing about that. I don't know about like exactly how the licensing for the like actual localized text worked with Yggdra Union back when it like first released, but a lot of times the rights to the translation actually belongs to the original company for the game and not the localization house. So that's why you'll actually sometimes see some games that are released by a different company using a script from a previous localization. Like when .emu released East 1 and 2 on mobile, it was using the Xseed script.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so I'm really interested to see like what like if people like will do the compare contrast and see like if they're using just the same script or like they relocalized it.
I mean, we even have an example like recently with the Yggdra Mono PC ports. Those are based off of the Atlas and NIS America scripts, respectively.
I actually didn't know they were based on. I thought they had to like redo them, like parts of them.
I think they tweaked them a bit, but
they did an extra editing pass or two on them. So, but yeah, the basis of those localized scripts on the PC versions are the Atlas and NISA.
But I know for Yggdra Union, this is a game I've had my eye on for a long time. I own the GBA version, I own the PSP version. I just never played them. And I remember thinking when the game got announced for Switch like 2 or 3 years ago, I remember I'm pretty sure we talked about it on the podcast. We're like, well, who's going to localize it? Like, or who's going to publish it in the West? Because is it going to be Atlas? But probably not, because that was before... The original release was before Atlas was part of Sega, and now the other part of Sega, they don't really publish anything that's not Atlas or Sega another.
Like Vanillaware is like that's it, pretty much.
Yeah, but even Vanillaware is already kind of like buddy with Atlas.
Yeah.
But I was kind of wondering, like, well, somebody's got to bring it over, and then Sting is just like, no, we'll just do it ourselves.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's fucking awesome.
Obviously, that means there's like not going to be any, like they don't have to worry about a physical release. They don't have to have a presence over here or anything like that. As long as they can just put it on Steam, then might as well have it available worldwide, right?
Be a very good Steam Deck game.
Yeah. So, and they have other games in that Department Heaven series that could also maybe. I know there's like Gungnir, but there's Sony's involved in that, so that might be a little bit weirder. But
yeah, there's Knights of the Nightmare and Riviera. Knights of the Nightmare. Yeah. That I really want Steam to go all. I hope this is very successful, and I want to give Steam the confidence to just fucking do this with all their games, just do it. And there's like multiple spin-offs of like Yggdra Union as well. There's like
Gloria Union,
yeah,
which was never localized.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So this is like such out of nowhere news that like I'm really happy about. That's awesome. Like Yggdra Union is such a good game. I'm ready to play it like for the 5th or 6th time.
That's coming out in like a little over a week. So
yeah, nothing else comes out in February.
Well, coming out in early access. Yeah, in February, nothing else is releasing, and we actually have a February release date announcement coming up.
I'll take this early access because it's actually content complete, which is unfair to other early access games. I get it, but it's content complete.
And I guess one thing I didn't state is that this PC port will, even on release, have a rewind function, autosave, hints, battle speed toggles, and a few other tweaks. So it's got some work put into it.
It's I'm excited, man. That's awesome.
One of the many February releases that's only about a month away or 3 weeks away, really, and that is Like a Dragon Ishin. Ishin? Which way is it? All right, Ishin. So the first officially English release of what was previously Yakuza Ishin. As we've gone through the marketing cycle of this game, we've gotten trailers for the combat, for the different combat styles, things like that. The most recent gameplay trailer that we got is for the Trooper card system, which are basically buffs that you assign to the combat styles to increase their power or gain extra experience. Was the trooper card system in the original release of this game?
Yes, but it was confined solely to like a battle dungeon like mini game, like it was like segmented off from like the main story. So like they're kind of like like putting this system into like a more universal fashion in in this re-release. But like this concept that these trooper cards were like in the original.
All right, so they kind of just expanded their scope here a bit.
Yeah.
And then tied to the announcement of the detailing of the trooper card gameplay mechanic, Sega and RGG Studio have announced 2 like special guest cameo troopers. And this seems very incongruent to me. I don't know exactly the reasoning behind it, but I'm just going to read the headline. So, wrestler Kenny Omega and actor Rahul Kohli, who is best known for a CW show iZombie, these two people will have special trooper cards in Like a Dragon Ishin.
That's awesome.
Like
Kenny Omega is awesome. So I mean, yeah, sure. Like he's a big fan, deserves it. I don't know too much about the other dude, but I'm sure he's awesome too. But like there's such a cool collaboration, but it's not the first time that like, you know, the Yakuza series has done like these offshoot collaborations, like for some of like the clan mini games for like I think Yakuza 6. I want to say they had like Neo Japan collabs, so it's not like unheard of, right? Like they've done collaborations with other like Japanese agencies, especially like wrestling agencies in past entries. So, you know, just seeing more like cameo stuff like this is like not totally unheard of. Like it's cool that they get represented and probably have like really fun superpowers.
Sega also mentioned that these are 2 of 6, so there's 4 more.
Or more big cameos. So who are we thinking for? Yeah, who's it gonna be? Who's next? Who do you want to see in?
Who was it that we saw like the first leak of Yakuza 8?
Oh man, who was it?
He's a Japanese wrestler, right?
The Japanese wrestler, yeah, sort of like an influencer as well. Dang, that'd be pretty good. What are we thinking? I can't think of
an MMA fighter.
MMA fighter. There we go.
Mikuru Asakura.
There we go.
That sounds
familiar. Not so well known in the West, but you know, just like he's clearly a celebrity in Japan in MMA. MMA people probably know him.
A member of BTS. So. there you go. What else? So all right, Chow. If you were to have one voice actor or voice actress be a trooper card, who do you want it to be?
We're gonna have iFaroes again.
Okay. All right.
Does she voice anyone in Yakuza or Like a Dragon?
I don't know.
I was curious.
But I don't know. Most recent anime she voices in JoJo protagonist, the latest JoJo Jolie. So.
You know what? I think they should have Gact.
Oh no, I don't want to hear him again.
Let's go. That's what I'm betting on. That's my top pick. Gact.
And then the next piece of news that we've got is a departure from BioWare, which unfortunately I feel like is a bit of a broken record. So let me just read the headline first. So Mac Walters, who was a writer on Mass Effect 2 and 3, has revealed in a LinkedIn post that he has left the company, and he hasn't. He left in late 2022. Obviously, BioWare is working on both a new Mass Effect title and the recently titled Dragon Age Dreadwolf. Neither game that we've really seen much of besides concept art or logos. So whenever I read a headline like this, I'm trying to like keep in perspective and not be like the sky is falling, because people leave companies, they change jobs, they take breaks all the time. It's just that in the context of BioWare is working on their 2 biggest franchises, but we haven't seen much of either. And now we don't, like, this is coming off the heels of Casey Hudson not being with the company and Mike Dara not being with the company. Like, basically the team behind the new Mass Effect and the new Dragon Age is not the same team that was responsible for them, which is always kind of a weird place to be when you know that the talent has rotated through. And obviously Metroid Prime is in the kind of the same state in Retro Studios, obviously not in the RPG space. So don't know if there's really a lot more meat to pick on this bone here, other than still no news on from an official standpoint about the new Dragon Age Dreadwolf or the new Mass Effect title?
They do plan to show it, like, soon, right?
May 7th. Is that what it is?
Is that soon? I suppose.
I guess. I don't know. We need to see. There needs to be some game that we need to see before these.
Wait, November 7th. So never mind.
Yeah, N7.
Okay.
Yeah, the last time we talked about this is when they stated about BioWare in general, was when they stated in a blog post last October that Dragon Age Dreadwolf was playable start to finish, but didn't share concept art, screenshot, a video clip, or nothing. Which I'm trying to be like reasonable, be like, all right, games in progress aren't always pretty. Sometimes vertical slices are very difficult to make. But it was just both of these games have just been, their marketing and their announcements have just been paced very strangely, or very at least unorthodox relative to their contemporaries.
There's just not a lot that's actually tangible.
There's
like concept art, and there's like for Dreadwolf, I still think it's just like a little bit of like art with like narration. But what's that character's name? I forget. Like the narrator guy. Anyways, like it's all we have.
Varric?
Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, so we don't have a writer from Mass Effect 2 and 3 on either the new Mass Effect or Dragon Age anymore, though I'm sure he might still be credited if his work contributed to those projects, but we have no idea when we'll see those. So just reporting on the departure here. Here's the other February release that I was talking about, because we don't have enough of those. This is a game that was originally announced in mid-December, but I don't think we ever mentioned it on a podcast due to the timing of our Game of the Year podcast. So Binary Haze is publishing a new tactical RPG with talent behind the original by the Tellius Fire Emblem games on it. This game is called Redemption Reapers. So I was looking at the podcast document that we have here about this headline. Redemption Reapers is coming out February 22nd, so right around the same time as Octopath Traveler 2 and Like a Dragon Ishin. And then Adam immediately blurted out that you are pretty excited for this game. So what are you seeing in Redemption Reapers that makes you look at a crowded February and say, you know what, this new IP, I'm excited for it?
Yeah, so first of all, the publisher-developer combo here is the one behind Ender Lilies, which I really liked a lot. So obviously this looks to be like a completely different type of game. Almost like entirely different. Like Ender Lilies is kind of like a 2D side scroller. This is 3D strategy RPG, different art style, different type of game entirely. So that's interesting. But yeah, it's got some pretty good pedigree behind it. The lead designer of the game is Masayuki Horikawa, who is he's worked a lot on Fire Emblem games. He did like Scenario on Thracia 776. He was the director of Path of Radiance. He did Scenario on either Binding Sword or Blazing Sword. I forget which one. He was involved with Fates and Awakening and Shadow Dragon, all in different ways. And so I don't think he no longer works with actual Fire Emblem, but he's got a lot of Fire Emblem experience. So this game, if you look at it and you see like this kind of looks like an off-brand Fire Emblem, it's like, well, it's more than just that. It's literally got like Fire Emblem DNA and how it's being designed. And it looks interesting. The scenario writer, let me look it up here. It's someone behind the Metal Gear Solid series.
Yeah, it's Tomokazu Fukushima.
Yep. And then also music by Rei Kondo, who's done some Fire Emblem music, I believe Awakening, as well as Bayonetta. So got some key, creatives behind it. And I liked what what the development studio did with Ender Lilies. So she's like, you know what, I'm interested in this. It looks like classic. It looks like almost like a Fire Emblem game, just with not an anime art style, but more like I wouldn't say grimdark, but kind of lightly grimdark art style to it. More realistic in a sense.
But I don't know, Adam. They don't look like VTubers, so I don't know if I can get invested.
So yeah, I'm interested. I'm curious to check this out. It releases late February for PlayStation 4, Nintendo Switch, and PC. So.
Yeah, it looks really cool. I mean, I'm definitely open to giving it a shot once I get a free time to like give it a shot.
What is free time? Yeah, good thing this is releasing in a month that nothing else is releasing.
Yeah, thank God.
It's one of those things where there's enough Fire Emblem likes where that alone isn't enough to be like, ooh, don't have enough of those. But when you mentioned that pedigree behind it, it's all right, maybe pay attention to this one. That's kind of what might set this apart from something like Lost Eidolons, which released last year that I still haven't made time for.
It's kind of an interesting thing, right? Because like this is like the type of project that you think would like get some sort of like crowdfunding campaign first.
That's what it kind of feels like, even though obviously it clearly didn't.
Yeah, so interesting.
Kind of funny looking at some of the, like this Masayuki Horikawa's credits. Now this is where I'm using Moby Games, which is a great resource for this, and sometimes they get the kanji mixed up. But apparently he also worked on Kingdom Hearts 3 as a level designer. That's interesting. Huh. It might be like it might be an error, and it might be like a person with a similar name, but yeah, I'm just looking at his credits. Like he's worked on Thracia 776, Binding Blade, Shadow Dragon, Awakening, Fates, Shadow Dragon. So yeah.
What platforms is this coming to again?
PlayStation 4, Nintendo Switch, and PC. It's also only going to be $50. So, only 50.
Yeah.
It's like, but it's. So
I remember like when all PC games were $50 or less.
Not quite full price. So it'll be interesting.
That's cheaper than what Brian paid for Forspoken on discount.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But I think I'm trying to remember. Ender Lilies was let me look. That was never $50.
No, that was.
So this is higher price than that. Let me see. What price is Ender Lilies now? I'm sure it might be discounted. The Ender Lilies is $25 standard right now. But yeah, I'll be curious to see what sort of budget's behind the game. Looking at the trailers, the gameplay looks really good. Some the facial animation doesn't look perfect, but then again, it's not a AAA game. So, but it'll be interesting to see.
This next piece of news is actually something that we should have been expecting, because this is something that was kind of announced ahead of time back in November. In November, we learned that in January of 2023, we would learn more about Fuga Melodies of Steel 2, and we would learn about its release date. Well, here that information is. So we got a new trailer for the upcoming Fuga Melodies of Steel 2. It will release on May 11th for PlayStation 5, Xbox Series, Xbox One, and PlayStation 4, Nintendo, and PC. So basically everything, anything modern.
And Game Pass.
Oh, and on Game Pass. And we got some new trailers for it. I know Adam's comment on the trailer is that the English voice acting is kind of stiff for the trailer, but if I recall correctly, the game itself is only in Japanese or French. Is that correct?
Yeah, correct. The English voice acting, it almost sounds like an AI or something. I'm pretty sure it's not, but maybe I'm assuming it's just some French.
Dude, that'd be awesome if it was.
I'm assuming it's some French developer reading an English script and just not trying. They just don't have a natural English accent. It doesn't really sound like a French accent either, though. But yeah, the game itself is only in Japanese and French. You should definitely play these games in French. That's just my opinion. It just kind of fits. But
the only funny thing about that is that the French voices are very obviously the Japanese voice cast, just speaking in broken French.
But this game, it adds a few new components. There's a morality system in the game almost, which is how is that going to work? As well as new ways to move along the battle paths.
You can use the soul cannon without killing someone.
Oh yeah, you can now do it's uses their life energy, but not their life itself.
Yeah. So I'm thinking can you use it 3 times now if you use Boron on it? And he has a lot of life energy.
Poor Boron, he's always the cannon fodder.
Yeah, apparently, according to a survey, Japanese people was it?
I think
some region kept using May as their tutorial.
I think it was Japan more wrong, but May is US. I think was it that?
I don't know. Why May? She's the most innocent one.
That's awesome.
She's the youngest. She has the most.
Throw May in there. Oh man, terrible. But yeah, this this is a direct sequel from the first game. Picks up right where the events left off. This is based on the true ending of the first game. So no spoilers. So a lot of people are alive in the true ending. And yeah, it looks like more Fuga, but Fuga was a damn good game. So for fighting that formula, I'm all for it.
And the last piece of news, Adam kind of covers this on a yearly basis, and I don't think anyone here is on this game enough to really speak to it in depth. But Bethesda has announced that a new update for the Elder Scrolls Online will release in June. That is the Elder Scrolls Online Necrom. And I know that they make these updates pretty much yearly, so I'm not sure if expansion is the right term or if they're more just kind of like packaged DLCs. In that case, like the line's blurring anyways, but it looks like it's basically 2 chapters that take place in the Morrowind region. If you're playing Elder Scrolls Online already, you probably can know more of what's in this update than we do. But from a high level, it just looks good that this game is still chugging along and getting frequent updates and is getting a lot of support from Bethesda, and we'll have another update this summer for players of that game to dive into. I don't know, when putting the news post together, Adam, if you saw anything that was worth highlighting here.
It's Morrowind again.
Didn't they put Morrowind in?
There was already a Morrowind expansion, and now this is like another Morrowind. It's like the seedy parts of Morrowind. I don't know. I know nothing about Elder Scrolls.
But yeah, with that note out of the way, that kind of covers us for news this week. So a quieter week on news, but we got a lot of detailed discussion out of all the releases, both expected and surprised out of January. And as we have probably stated one too many times, February is going to be pretty busy. The first week of February, I think, is a little bit of a breather. So next week we might have a chance to, at least play through more Fire Emblem or more Forspoken, or hey, even go back to One Piece Odyssey for those of us that have skipped it thus far.
There's a Nice 30th anniversary live happening.
Oh, there is.
Yes, there is.
Won't be cool too, would it be?
I was gonna say, are we expecting anything that's like Kuro or Falcom related? Because
they specifically say it's for new NIS announcements. Yeah. So I'm assuming not Kuro, unless we're now considering Trails games as NIS games.
Yeah,
but
I think the thing that we're all expecting really is the Disgaea 7 localization announcement. I think that's the surefire bet. Anything else, I don't fucking know.
I forgot that game hadn't. We've gotten plenty of trailers for that game on the Japanese side. I know sites like Amatsu have been covering all those character trailers as they release, but still nothing official on the English front. So I think that's a safe bet. And looking ahead at the release calendar for February, it looks like the next 2 major games in our purview are Labyrinth Galleria, which obviously we announced that we talked about that game, and James put up some footage on that just a couple of weeks ago. And then, of course, Wild Hearts, the monster hunting game from EA, is releasing in the middle of the month.
Excited for that one.
Mm-hmm. So we will be back next week with another edition of the Tetracast. The itinerary is not quite clear, but it'll round into form as we go throughout the week. You can read up on the One Piece Odyssey review up on the site, rpgsite.net. And of course, all the other news that we've been covering throughout the week is also up on the website. We also have been putting up a handful of guides for both Fire Emblem Engage as well as the Persona 3 and 4 re-releases are still getting some updated pages up on the site as well. You can follow RPG Site on most of the social media channels on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. You can join our Discord at discord.gg/RPGsite or by hitting the link at the top of the homepage. And we'll be back next week with another episode of the Tetracast. If you enjoyed listening to this, leave us a rating, leave us a comment. We love seeing those if we get a chance to read them. But until you hear from us next time, stay safe and take care. We'll talk to you then.
We'll never fight alone.